I'm the Director for Education at the British Council in Bangladesh and have spent the last 3 years in Bangladesh, but because of the corona situation at the moment, I'm currently at my home base in Germany. Of course, we're having this virtual career talk. As many of you may know, we have had some of these career talks in the past that have been face-to-face. And so we hope in the future to be able to have those again. But for the moment, this is a good way to be able to meet and share information, share ideas. Clearly, Bangladesh is a country that is developing very, very quickly. And so working in the development sector is a very interesting career path for many different people. And of course, the development sector is very wide and varied, from health to education to economics across the board. There are subsectors, there are work in all of those subsectors. I'm very grateful to our 4 guests who are joining us today to share their expertise, some more recent expertise, some have long-standing expertise. So thank you very much to Professor Niaz Khan from Dhaka University, who has many, many years of experience in the development sector, lectures in this area as well, has worked with BRAC and has a lot of experience that I'm sure you will find very useful. Also, hands-on experience from our next participant, our next expert, Saudia Anwer, who is working with UNDP in Iraq. Obviously, a very interesting and difficult, challenging context to be working in, but clearly where development is very, very highly needed. Then we have Marziana Nandita, Economic Advisor with the FCDO, or what might have formerly been known to many of you as DFID. As many of you may have read, Foreign and Commonwealth Office in the UK has merged together with DFID to form the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office. So Marziana is joining us from there. And then finally today we have Ishret Wahid from CARE Bangladesh. So a very wide range of experience from academic to UN agencies to large development agencies to on the ground INGOs. I hope you'll find this talk very interesting, and I will hand it back over briefly to just to do a bit of housekeeping, and then we will jump straight in with our first talk for today. Naveed, over to you.
So yes, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this session. Just to let you know that this session is being recorded and also
Naveed, do we have you?
Sorry, I just spoke. I was on mute. Sorry. So yes, so good evening, everyone. Welcome to this session, and thanks to our honorable guest speakers. So for everyone, just to let you know that this session is being recorded, and for everyone, apart from the speakers, we are requesting all to keep your microphones on mute and cameras turned off. At the end of this speech of our speakers, you will get a chance to ask your questions. Also, in the meantime, you will have the option to write your questions in the chat box. So yes, I hope we will have a very fruitful session and discussion today. Thanks. That's all from me, David. Over to you. Thank you.
Right. Okay. So now I would like to hand over to Professor Dr. Niaz Ahmed Khan to talk us through some of his experiences and some suggestions about how he has engaged with development in his career. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Maynard, for that introduction and setting the scene. Very good to see my good friends and also people who have joined us. I actually know many of you at a personal level. So it's a very complacent feeling. Now, I just have about 10 minutes, although the agenda says I have to make a speech. I want to keep it informal and very down to earth. And in any case, I cannot make a speech. I simply don't have that grandeur to bring in to make it a formal speech. Now, just to give you a bit of a sense where I'm coming from, I am a teacher and I'm quite proud about that. But the fact is I've been out of the university, in and out of the university for about 12 years. So I actually worked in the shoes of the practitioners in different capacities, including UN. Just to make that very brief point as modestly as possible, it is important for us to be able to see the bridge between theory and practice if we want to make the most of this opportunity that's offered by the development sector. It's extremely important. And your choice, first, my appreciation goes to British Council, to BUKAN, and all the organizers, Wahid and his team, and Director Maynard, that here we see a reflection of theory and practice working together. We have a blend of practicing experience and academics coming together and also trying to share their insights and experiences. Now, the next 8 minutes or so that I have, what I plan to do is to organize the discussion in just three kind of broad questions, revolving around three questions. The first question is, what is this development sector that we all talk about? What is it? Is this something that we believe in kind of unison, that this is the definition of development sector? So it's important to figure out and try to get, if you like, a reckoning of the beast that we are focusing on, the development sector. So that's the first point. The second point would be, so how do we, our young friends, remember Bangladesh is now facing the demographic dividend. That's a great prospect that we are faced with. So much will depend on our young men and women. They will have to carry the torch forward. So it's important for me, the second question is then, how do we as young people, and I want to take this opportunity to blend myself into the young people group, at least for 1 hour. Okay. So how do we prepare ourselves to make the most of this development sector? So that's the second question. And then the third question is a bit personal. How have I, as a UK alumnus, benefited, or let's say, to put it on a kind of more theoretical basis, not benefited from the UK exposure and education that I had the opportunity to go through? So these are my three questions. So I'll just revolve around these three questions in the next 7 to 8 minutes. Now, the first question, as I said, what is this development sector? Now, conceptually, the actors, the major actors in development are categorized into kind of three broad groups, three broad chunks, if you like. The first would be the regulators who will regulate. And that's the government. We call it the first sector, the regulators. The second sector will be the profit makers, the private sector who are there officially, that's their official mandate to make a profit, and there's nothing wrong about it. The problem is when we go beyond making a profit and we step into profiteering, that's where the problem starts. So the distinction between profit and profiteering, as long as we are within the profit sector, that's sector 2, we call it the private sector. They are a major player. And then the third sector is the volunteers. The volunteers who provide their expertise and time, okay, into the development of a country, a community, whatever their scope is. So the main characteristic feature is volunteering, the spirit of volunteering. That's the characteristic feature. So this is called more popularly in the more kind of academic sphere, we call them the third sector. This is what traditionally would be the mainstay of the development sector. Now, this involves a wide range of institutions, the non-government entities, the voluntary associations of any type, the professional bodies playing an advocacy role. So the whole range of institutions between the regulators, the government, and the second sector, that whole range of institutions. Now in Bangladesh, it's difficult to ascertain the exact number, the magnitude and the size of the third sector. Now, officially, we've got about 4,800 officially registered non-government entities in Bangladesh. And I don't have time to get into great level details of it. There are different laws in this country, different laws and regulations, and you can have registrations in as many as 5 different categories and levels with the government. So government registered non-government entities would be around, let's say, rounding up 5,000. But the actual number, although not ascertained, most literature put it to a staggering 30,000 institutions in the third sector. So it's a quite large entity we're talking about. Now, let me just finish there. The second question now is that how do we, especially our young friends, young men and women in this country, how do we as individuals prepare ourselves for the third sector? Just to put the perspective and putting the kind of the right context in, let me give you a sense of the employment situation in this country. The average unemployment rate is about 4.5%. To be precise, it's 4.39 as of the last year. So let's say 4.5%, the average unemployment. But the graduate unemployment rate, people coming out of the universities, the unemployment rate is staggering, 39%. So look at this figure, 4.5 average, 39 for graduates. So there is something seriously wrong somewhere. Are we providing the right type of skills? When our graduates are coming out into the market, there seems to be a serious skills gap. Now, let me just put this very briefly. How do we prepare ourselves? So that is a formidable challenge, not to put off our young friends, but to just to give you a sense of reality. Yes, we are up against a formidable challenge, but we have to do something about it. We can't just sit idle. We can't just sit idle to government, the government to rescue us. No government has ever rescued anyone. That's the reality. That's the history of the world. Okay? They will be with you if you are making the first step. That's the fundamental point. Now, so how do you prepare yourself? Now, some skills we can do ourselves. I'm keeping an eye on the watch. Okay, so another 5 minutes. Some skills we have, the opportunity to develop ourselves. Interpersonal skills, communication skills, we call them soft skills. We, as university graduates or people who are into the university system, let's try to learn one language. Beyond Bangla and English, let's try to learn one of the UN languages. Let's try to keep our eyes and ears open. By that we mean, let's try to have a sense of what's happening in and around the world. Let's try to read the newspapers on a regular basis. Not expecting that you need to read a newspaper cover to cover. just have a feel of it so that you are abreast of the developments, okay, in and around your life. Okay, so that's the other skills, a bit of basic communication, a bit of basic team work skills, a bit of basic social leadership skills. Let's join some social and voluntary agencies. Rotaries, for example, just a simple example. There are so many agencies. Every university offers, for example, clubs, reading clubs, photography clubs, etc. Let's try to make use of this. Why? Let's also try to make use of the big events coming in. Events like this, great opportunity, conferences, webinars. Much of these are actually free nowadays. And taking advantage of the COVID situation, you can actually enroll yourself to some of the free for now, online courses offered by some of the top universities, including Oxford and Harvard. Okay, these are open now. So the point I'm trying to make is that there are certain skills that we can develop without having to rely on the university too much, or without having to rely on anybody else. This is something we can do on our own. It's important to prepare ourselves to develop the network. The other part will be making use of the subjects. For example, the one important point will be, let's say, in most of the social science and business, we talk about, we actually learn one way or the other, there are different subjects, human resources, project management. Let's try to learn them at a practicing level. Let's keep this at a practicing level. Let's invite people like the panelists here. Let's invite them into the universities. Let's have a blend between practitioners and the academics. So I'm going to stop there on my second question, and just 2 minutes more on my third question. So how have I benefited or not benefited from the UK education and exposure? Now, I see these two important gains that I have got from the UK exposure. As I said, I don't feel very comfortable to talk about myself. I actually spent a substantial amount of my time in the UK, both as a graduate student and as a researcher, and also as a regular staff in some of the universities. So just 2 more minutes on this and I'm going to finish. Apologies for that. So just one point. I think UK has given me two things. UK education, my PhDs, my postdoc, and my additional professional qualifications, including a social work qualification. Now, number one, it is a brand. UK degrees have a brand. Okay. Brand may not be the most appropriate term, and I don't really care. It serves my purpose. Okay. So it is a brand, but a brand will only work if the incumbent is competent enough. The brand will only work if you know how to use the brand. So that's where your initiative would come in. UK degrees are a brand, number one, that has helped me. Secondly, two important points on this, the second point. One is it has helped me to develop networks. Networks both at the professional level and at the personal level. Networks are important in people's life. That's the social capital. UK degree has also given me some hands-on tools that I can now try. UK degree has given me some specific project management skills which I've used, okay, as not just in my academic sphere, but also as a practicing manager. I've taken plenty of your time. Thank you again for giving me this opportunity. I hope we'll have good time with our young people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor Khan. It's very, very interesting to hear from you, and the points you're making about moving from theory into practice, about the different subsectors within the development sector are quite interesting. And some of the statistics you were quoting, I found quite staggering as well. I knew that there was very high graduate unemployment, but 39% is quite astounding. Clearly, there are lots of questions that need to be asked about the relevance of some of the courses and some of the education that is currently being offered. also interesting your perspectives on your time in the UK and how it not just in terms of the academic aspect, but in terms of a more fully rounded approach. To participants, if you have questions, please post them in the chat box and we will try to come back to them during the course of today. If we can't answer them within this session, we will pick up these questions and come back to you at some point later once we've been able to get some answers for you. Thank you very much. We will now move on in the interests of time. We will move on to our next speaker, Saudia Anwer. Saudia, can I just ask you, are you actually in Baghdad at the moment? Are you in Iraq? Saudia, are you with us?
Yes. Thank you, Bernard. Thank you very much for having me here. I would also prefer to thanks to Naveed and his team and British Council for organizing this event and the participant as well. So with the interest of time, I would cover 3 agenda in my discussion. So first, like my kind of experience and kind of capacity in development as development professionals in the non-profit sector, and second, like kind of tips or few of my experience I want to share with young professionals who wants to actually come in this sector, and third of all, how can I actually benefited by Commonwealth Scholarship. So this will be 3 areas where I want to touch upon. But before going to that, I would like to answer your kind of questions like you asked. I joined Erbil office, Erbil, Iraq on 16th of July. So till now I am telecommuting from Bangladesh, and it's kind of like previously I worked in Kenya for a couple of months. I also worked in UK with development initiatives. So this is gonna be my like another experience in the development sector. So further ado, I would like to say something about myself. I have started my career in the non-profit sector in 2007 when disaster actually struck Bangladesh. All of us has experience about disaster Sidor. So 10 days after the disaster Sidor, I joined in the UK-based organization which is named Action on Disability and Development. So before then, I worked with Department of Environment for 1 year and also with European Union, but as a full-time job, I actually joined in 2007. So then I worked with different like international and national organization with different capacity, and I went to UK in the year of 2014. I did my graduation on international development with Commonwealth Scholarship from the University of Sheffield. And then after coming back to Bangladesh, I joined in UNDP Bangladesh. And I actually closed this chapter with UNDP Bangladesh as project manager with one of the projects, which is called National Adaptation Plan. And right now I'm looking UNDP Iraq's project, particularly on the livelihood programs. This is one of the biggest program in UNDP Iraq. So my experience, I don't consider myself as an expert. I'm still learning from the process. But what I want to mention, like this profession, this non-profit sector, sometimes we actually got the vibe this is kind of international like world, and there are lots of money comes in, and you can make good salary by entering this profession. Actually, this is not the whole scenario. This profession is very much passion driven. So you have to have passions to make a difference in people's life. This is the core thing of this profession. So far, this is my understanding in like around 14 years that I passed by with development sector. So with this saying, I want to say like, you have to do something like this kind of spirit you have to have with compassion and empathy. Why I said empathy, because I have found so many like wonderful kind of smart and then have a good portfolio, have good results academically, but they actually after some time they did not feel that much interest to contribute in this arena. So before entering in the non-profit sector, you have to have kind of notion or kind of giving mentality or kind of flexibility to make a difference in this sector. So with this, I want to say, like a few days ago, I read an article where this is clearly mentioned, like in the private sector, we have invested around $125 per year on per employees. But on the non-profit sector, we just spend $25 per employee per year. Why I mention these statistics? Because there are very little scope by the organization where you are going to enter in to capacitate yourself. This will be only you who actually groom up to grow in this sector. So you have to be like that much passionate in this sector so that you can learn, you can make yourself to fit for the purpose. So for fitting you with this sector, I would like to mention few things. Like, as I said, you have interest to meet new people. Like from day one, you have to have that kind of empathy to know the peoples who actually surround yourself and who has kind of experience in the non-profit sector. You can interact with them, you can learn from them, like what they are doing, what kind of things actually necessary to make a good difference in this sector. So this is number one: meet new people, meet the people who is relevant as a stakeholder. And number two will be like to know the environment, to know the ecosystem. There are so many associations, like NGO association, where you can interact with, so that you can understand the interest, like with the interest of time, you can interact with the people who are actually making contribution, a very good contribution in terms of social change. So for familiarize yourself, you have to know the system first and the environment as well. There is a huge scope to make linkage between government sector, private sector, and non-profit, like as a stakeholder. So this is the only like kind of area, only like of sector where you can make a bridge, you can make a linkage in between these three entities. So for making a good contribution on that, you have to be aware of policy making, you have to have like kind of capacity or social skills to like interact with different set of people, not just the affected people, but also policymakers, also the parliamentarian, also the businessmen. So there are huge like different, if you do a mapping in the non-profit sectors, you can find there are so many stakeholders, and you have to be in a position where you have a good information about all of the stakeholders. So this will be number two. Number three is all like most of the time we talk about like we don't bother that much on statistics on financing, but remember, data is very important, number is very important. Like for any kind of contribution to this sector, you have to have like kind of knowledge or skill set where you can support to the sector or to the organization to make data driven decisions. So you have to know about data, you have to have good information on like kind of skill set on financing, on also about the stakeholder analysis. So this will be number three. Number four will be like return on investment. Time is very important. Sometimes we say we are very busy, we don't have adequate time to actually learn new skills, but you will not be that much like more than free more than this time, because we have like kind of time constraint. So with the interest of time, you should make your time like you should engage yourself in a way so that you can get good return on that. So return on investment is very much a term for the private sectors, but nowadays in the non-profit sector, we also talk about return on investment. We also talk about like accountability. So to make yourself accountable for the affected people for whom you are actually serving or for whom you are working on. So this kind of thing you have to understand like ahead of the time so that you can make a contribution. So this is number four, to know about the like your time investment on particular area where you should get some good return from that. So this is number four. Number five will be, which is very important, like most of the time when we discuss with our young professionals, they actually not that much have sense on like kind of international angles, because in the development sectors you have to have see the broader perspective. if you work on disaster risk reduction, this is not just about the disaster in Bangladesh. You have to have understanding on transboundary issue, you have knowledge on like what's going on in the neighborhood countries, what is going on in different like kind of developed countries, and also in the conflict affected countries. So to get the broader perspective, you have to put yourself in the challenging areas. So more often I said like travel as much as possible. Travel not just to the European country, but also the country where people actually have tougher problem than our hometown. So this kind of travel, you actually give a sense like what kind of challenges people are facing right now and what will be the appropriate solutions for this. So this will be number 4, like travel in different areas. Even within the hometown, you can travel from Dhaka to different like affected areas where you can get some kind of vibe about the people's living and also about the challenges that actually they are facing right now. So this is number 5, and number 6 will be like doing internship, because internship is the only way in which way you actually get a real sense of work. Because beforehand it's not possible to get the like nothing better than the get a good internship from any organization. It's not necessary to be the UN organization, because being UN professionals, most often I heard like how can you end up to UN organization. So this is not that much needed, like you have to be intern in the UN organization. You can start from even in the national organization. By doing this you can get a lens of like community, like what kind of challenges like local based organization actually facing at this very moment of time. How can they actually interact with the grassroots level peoples, and how actually they contribute on the capacity building issue. So these are the things that you have to have like kind of in a culture where you can understand this vibe and you can make yourself fit for this. Rather than just for the sake of doing something, you should understand the sector, the people, and the effective areas where you are going to work. Because in the NGO field or non-profit field, the most important thing is we want to make a change in the social sector. We want to be the change like kind of advocate. Any kind of changes, we can make a good contribution on that if we have a good depth of knowledge about the surrounding. So this is in regards to like young professionals who actually want to enter in this profession. Number 3, like how actually I got benefited from Commonwealth Scholarship. Like this is the first time when I entered in UK, I actually felt myself for the first time in the challenging area. Most of the time I was very much like in a very convincing, I reconcile myself like this cannot be any better than staying in this like kind of comfortable zone. So in UK, I actually put myself outside of my comfort zone. So by doing that, I actually really understand the Niaz sir also mentioned about the intelligence, emotional intelligence. You have to know like what is your strength, what is your weakness, what kind of thing, how you actually manage your time, what will be the tricks for stress management. So this kind of like soft skill is very, very needed for any kind of profession. This is not just required for the non-profit sector, but also any sector you want to contribute, you have this soft skill. Because hard skill, you can get the specificity from any job. But for the soft skill, this is the skill what actually make a difference from you to others. So for being on the safe side, you have to know like how can you actually be more compassionate, more empathy, and then how can you actually do your time management, how can you react on any kind of stress. So this was my lessons. Like when I entered in UK, I actually put myself in like outside of my comfort zone, and I realized myself for the very first time. I understood like what is my like kind of key strength to adjust any kind of new environment. So this was the learning that actually I got. Apart from the interaction with so many, like I have till now those friends who had a like we had a very good rapport with like different culture, different like kind of peoples, because in my department we interact on that time around 50 nationwide like kind of students. So we got the vibe like what is happening in Nigeria, what kind of experience Nigerian students actually brought in UK. And I also like exchange my kind of knowledge about the development scenario in Bangladesh. So this kind of interaction only possible if you actually like go somewhere where you can put yourself in the challenging kind of set. So the UK actually gave that understanding to me, and after coming back, I was kind of regular. I was trying to actually mentor new young people who actually wanted to come in this sector, and most often they are very fascinated, and they are doing very much like they're following technique, like kind of prescriptive recipe. They wanted to make themselves sure by doing this they will enter in UN. So this kind of fascination is not appreciated. You should start like by doing small things. You can even put yourself in a bigger pictures. So there is a saying from Mother Teresa. What she says, doing small things but with great love. So this is not necessarily to think bigger at your like from the beginning of your career, but doing small things that actually really contributing for your career in the later perspective of your life. So without further saying, I will stop here, and thank you very much again, and thank you my other panelists who are actually here. It's very nice to see everyone in this platform. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Saudia. Very interesting perspectives that you've given us. I particularly like your point about if you want to head into this development sector, empathy and passion is what you must have, and that it's not necessarily something that should be financially driven. Clearly, finances are something that we all need to consider, but empathy and passion are the two bedrocks of wanting to be involved in this sector. Right, enough from me. Let's move on to our next speaker in the interests of time. Marziana from FCDO. It would be interesting to hear your perspectives on how you have worked in this sector and how you got there. Thank you.
Thank you. David, if you can kindly keep your camera on so that I'm talking to someone rather than to a screen, that would be great. Or anyone, if you want. Anyone wants to turn their camera on.
I'm happy to stay on.
So I'll try my best not to repeat what my predecessors have really nicely described, and maybe those were quite on the high level discussion. So I'll take it down to a notch below, perhaps for people who are still students, right? So we were talking about passion and empathy, and how did I get my passion for development? So I had just come out of high school or college, whatever we call it in Bangladesh. And then I was deciding, I was in my gap year, I was preparing to go to the UK and deciding what subject to study. And I met this British volunteer called Seymour, and she had left her high-flying corporate job in the UK and come all the way to Bangladesh, first time in Asia, to volunteer for a small Bangladeshi NGO called Bangladesh Rural Improvement Foundation. And she's the one who actually gave me perspective about the development sector. If you grow up in Bangladesh, you know about BRAC, you know about Plan, Proshika, whoever is working, but how it is perceived outside of Bangladesh and how Bangladesh's development sector is so flourished, so pioneering in so many of the new and innovative works in development, I obviously didn't know as an 18-year-old. And Anne kind of brought me into light to that. And then I have to thank my mother. She was like, I'm not trusting you to go off all on your own to UK without having some experience to do things on your own. So I decided I will go and I'll work for this small NGO called Breathe, which still is based in north of Bangladesh. And I went up there for 6 to 8 months time. And I spent a year there working. So even before I went to uni, I knew I wanted to work in development because it was so empowering. You know, it was so much fun. You're almost like a farm chicken in Dhaka, going to school, coming back, and then you're there in a village. You meet people. It's a very grounding experience. You see real Bangladesh. And that one bit, going to field, is still as exciting to me today after, how many, 16 years now, than it was back then. So it's still very exhilarating. That's one of the best things about working in development. You get to go to field, you get to meet people. When you're whinging about, oh, I don't have enough money to buy God knows what, and then you meet people in the field who are making do with such little money, and they're happy and they're so generous. you really reassess. You take a step back and think, what is happiness and how can I make myself happy? Yes, money matters. I'm an economist, so of course I'll say monetary incentives are important. But when you go to the field, you just meet so many people. Rural women, so bold, so powerful, so compassionate. They face so much and they still have so much strength. I am not, whoever calls it a charity sector or wants to see that I'm coming in and solving someone else's problem, I'm sorry, the sector, the field teaches us so much more, gives us so much more as human beings than we bring in with some donor money. It's actually, we need to think and reassess and maybe think about how we terms some of those terms, right? So that's where my passion kind of started, that I went to Bristol to do economics. And every summer when I would come back, I would try different NGOs and INGOs, because there are lots of different NGOs that you can work for. There is WASH, there is gender, whatever is your interest, you can really take a pick. And some of these Bangladeshi universities, I know this summer holiday is not really 3 months long. So what you can do a work shadow perhaps. You can do a work shadow, follow someone in your circle. If there is a cool apu or bhaiya or some uncle who you think is doing something interesting, whatever that field might be, ask that person what it is that their job really incorporates on a day-to-day level. If you can go and follow them around at their workplace for a week. So if you have only 2 weeks summer break, you can actually fit in one work shadowing. And you can do cold calling. You can call people, annoy people a little. If they're absolutely irritated, of course, you move on to the next person. But it is really important to see who you want to become in the next 2-3 years time. And as I did it, once I thought like, wow, INGO, I'm doing an internship with this big INGO. It was going to be so exciting. I'll be sitting in an office. And they told me, here is the project documentation. Maybe you can translate them. You don't even have to come to work. And I was like, oh, that doesn't work. That doesn't help. So I ended up doing internship for 2 NGOs at the same time. One was research NGO, another was this international NGO for whom I did the translation work for. And then the following summer, I did internship at a bank, because after all, I'm doing a degree in economics, and I really should give myself all these wide opportunities. So if you're a student, anything that comes into your head, try and get into the sector, see how it is. And Bangladeshi private sector is so much more developed now than it was 5-10 years back, right? There is marketing, there is media, there is advertising, everything. And the good thing about development sector is whatever your skill set is, there is a space for you in this sector. If you had a background in marketing, you can just come in and use those skills for behavioral change communication. So that's the interesting bit. It gives you entry at any level. You don't have to be like me, who at 18 decides that I want to work in development. And even I changed my track, because I started off wanting to be a development worker, and then Bristol and its rigorous econometrics kind of changed my mindset. I was like, oh, I want to do research in development economics. So I shifted my gear a little. And then I thought that, am I ready for academia? Do I want to do research in the field for a bit and then go, or vice versa? So that's where comes in your online courses that Professor Niaz mentioned. In my days, it wasn't really that big. So I went and did a summer school course in LSE, London School of Economics. And then I went in to do a master's in international development and economics in Bath. And Bristol kind of had changed my orientation a lot. So I wasn't really thinking from a rights-based perspective only. I started thinking, so who will pay for all this work that needs to be done? How can we make more efficient? I had become so much of an economist that it wasn't possible for me to come in as a passionate development worker anymore. I had to have that angle. So when I came back to Bangladesh, I started working with a think tank, Center for Policy Dialogue. And then I moved on. I did some macro work there. And then I moved on to BRAC, Research and Evaluation Division. I was then doing microeconomic, development economics related research, mostly focusing on impact evaluation. And I worked there for about half a decade. And then I took a step back and decided, do I want to do a PhD? Do I want to become an academic? Do I want to continue this? So at every point in your career, I think you need to take a step back in every 3 to 4 years and think, what do you want to do next? What are your best skill sets? And I figured that I'm quite a social person, but I also want to stick to my technical skills. So, and then this whole economic advisor job advertisement came out in the news. And I thought, okay, that is something that's half and half. It plays both of my strengths, and I get to be working with people, and I also get to do research work that I like. Or So now what I do is that I assess the portfolio, effectiveness of the whole portfolio of health, education, and BRAC that the British ODA is paying for, Overseas Development Assistance is paying for, is part of our overall office portfolio. And I work with partners, I work with governments, and I also work with researchers and commission research. So there is a balance, but how do I see myself to the next role? What will be my next role? So in every 3 to 4 years, I sit back and I think, what do I want to do next? What suits me best? Just because I've been a researcher 5 years doesn't mean I have to be that. I can change. And this is an amazing sector. It will give you that space. So what we are encouraged in our office to do is that if you want to shift your portfolio, look at what you haven't done in your competency sets and try and gearing those opportunities. Maybe switch your team, maybe find a mentor within your organization. In this case, there is a big economics cadre, so I can talk to the cadre and figure out which country I might want to have experience in. But if you're in a particular NGO, you can always talk to a different team and switch. And for my case, I'm watching outside what sort of evidence is coming up, what sector I might want to go next. Like now I want to be an expert in health economics. That's my target for the next 2 years. And I'll think after that what I do. But I might not stay in research and as an economist forever, or I might just do completely opposite. Whatever you do, it's good to be able to sit back and relax and think, what is it that makes you interested in this sector in the first place? Because any work you choose to go into is going to be difficult. There will be days when you want, I wish I didn't have to have a job. I wish I had enough money. I can kick back and relax. But if you know exactly why you love this job in the first place, you can endure it all. And one good thing about as a woman in development sector is that it is more women friendly compared to corporate. I won't say it with 100% confidence, but with quite a lot of confidence, since I haven't worked in the corporate sector. So I don't have the counterfactual to argue, but I would say it's way more women friendly. You can be yourself. It's more chilled. People are more relaxed. And the work-life balance, if not all the times, most of the time, is better than your average job. That's what I have found. And UK, I think, I mean, I did my undergrad and postgrad in the UK. My formidable years were in the UK. So it's a really emotional space for me. It's really difficult to separate what is the exact thing that helped me a lot. I just can't imagine my life without having my friends, having my university in the UK. And now I work for a British government. So it definitely helps. I know the language, I get the tonalities, the cultural nuances. Those are very, very helpful. But it doesn't mean that you can't pick those up. You can talk to people by working with people. You can figure out those cultural nuances if you haven't had a UK degree before. But what I think is cool, at that time was tough, is that in a UK degree, it's a yearly exam system mostly. So you can party all year, and at the end of the year, if you haven't done your studies, you're screwed big time. So, and that really helped me manage my own time. So as an economist, I work with different teams. So I really have to be on top of my portfolio. And those end of the year exam will come. So that, type thing that you have a deadline and you manage your own time. What you do with your time is nobody's business, but you have to be able to produce your work. Really, really grills it down in you that you know how to manage your time, how to be disciplined, and how to work with different teams. I think I'll stop there. And if there are any further questions, I'll take it from there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marziana. Very interesting to hear your experiences, and interesting to hear about the sort of mix of development with economics, which sometimes possibly doesn't necessarily so closely or naturally sit together. There was a question from Zinat Shelley, asking about many jobs are advertised where they're asking for years and years of experience. How can you get that experience? We'll come back to that question in a moment, but just a comment. I think many people advertise that they want 3 to 5 years experience. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's what they will get. So don't necessarily be dissuaded by the fact that it says 3 to 5 years experience. But the panelists can perhaps think about that question. Although some people have addressed that already with internships and with volunteering. Finally, and I know we're running towards the end of time, but I'd like to bring Ishret Wahid to the fore from CARE to talk about her experience of working in development. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I hope everyone can hear me loud and clear. So I was actually given a few points, which I was supposed to touch base on, but for the sake of time, I'll just keep it precise and as realistic as possible. So starting with the question, like, why become a development professional? And I would like to show something. This is a book that I really like. I like the title. It's called Becoming. And what it tells you and all of us, it's just life is a journey. So is your career. There's not a particular milestone where you arrive and you tell yourself, well, that's it. It's not. It's a continuum where we keep on going, and there's no limit to where you can achieve, what you can achieve in life, and what you can become out of yourselves. And I usually start sharing my experience with stories. That's the typical version of me. So I'll tell a short story. I started my development career with BRAC, and fortunately, I was allowed to go to the field a lot and spend a lot of quality time with people and communities. And it's great to hear from my previous speakers emphasizing that point, that being in the field, being out there is very important. And one of those days, I got to learn about a girl who was forced to an illegal abortion. And she was actually fighting for her life in the intensive care unit. So we rushed there, and I approached her, and in a shivering voice, she just told me, please help me, I want to leave. And I was shaken to the core. Being a fresh graduate out of the university, not having the understanding of how this complex development sector works, I was questioning my ability even to tell her something in response to what she had told me. But then I asked myself, like, what is it that I can do just being an individual? And I think what I did in the next 1 or 2 weeks is use my voice to speak to anyone who had possibly the capacity to influence her life, including her school teachers, her peers, community members. And I had to get back to the head office. As usual, it was end of my field attachment. And then 3 months later, I got a call. My colleague was informing me that the girl was back to her school. That was the moment I realized, where did I step in? This job is not about a paycheck that you get at the end of the month. It's not about 8.5 hours a day. Honestly, it's about that one cause that you choose for yourself, and you are so passionate about it, no matter what happens to you, your life journey, you pursue that with your biggest commitment and with all the efforts that you can put to it. So my cause is to work for women and girls who went through that kind of experience that we are all still fighting to address. And if you want to be a development sector professional, my first thing is please go and find your cause. Is it the child who's crying on the street that moves you deeply? Are you motivated because young people are just roaming around and they don't have anything to do? We just heard about unemployment. Does it bother you that so many people have nothing to do and we are yet struggling to become a middle income country? Well, how? Let's figure out. So what bothers you? Let's find it out. And that's the cause you may want to pursue as your professional career. So go and find your cause. It'd be my first piece of advice for everyone who's interested. Then there could be a question about, where do I start if I want to start? There's not really a standard rule or way to pursue your passion. You can really start from anywhere. And oftentimes, I see a lot of fresh graduates thinking about, I want to work with the INGO, I want to work with one of the biggest ones. Whenever you go and say the name, everybody would recognize, oh, that's the organization you work for, so proud of you. I'll tell you what, when I joined BRAC and I was I had to travel a lot with using the local and public transport. And there was a day a lady was asking me, what did you study? And I said, I did my master's from the University of Dhaka. And she said, oh, so you couldn't manage any other job? Come on, go and find a job in the bank. And I was so proud to say that, you know, my job makes me so happy that at the end of the day, when I see myself standing and having conversation with people, I see myself being so proud about it and so fully satisfied. So there's not really any right place to start. You can start from anywhere. You can start with your own startup, your own organization. Go and work with a really small local organization, because that's where you get to see what are the real problems. What are some of the realities on the ground? So it's critical to understand the context. And in some of our head, we have heard about paychecks and salaries and incentives. You're probably thinking, oh, the moment I start working in the sector, it comes with incentives like loads and loads of foreign trips and per diems and all of that. Traveling in, you know, all glams and gifts and cars and air trips and all of that. And I do see, it's really unfortunate, I do see a lot of development professionals posting on their social media pictures of them traveling on, you know, expensive luxury cars and foreign trips and all of that. But, you know, the truth is, it's not about this glams and gifts. It's beyond that, and it's far more difficult than we can all anticipate and understand. I think it's out there under the sun. At times, you will have to spend days and hours traveling 9 to 10 hours to get somewhere where the administration, the service providers, the private sector will not be able to reach. You will find yourself in the middle of nowhere. You will find yourself in a place where you will not see any vehicle, no food, and there's no toilet, and you have to just keep on working. So it's those difficult situations that you have to be able to tackle. And that makes it more difficult to pick it as a career choice, that yes, I do want to go there and do all of that. My previous speakers have already given a good sense of what is it that you can do. Internship is a good way, so I would not just repeat any of those. But my suggestion is really, if you have a list of organizations that you want to work for, please do visit their website. This is a great tool, I'm telling you. Personally, I have a list that I maintain. Every year it changes. Where do I want to work? What's my next stoppage or station? Let's put it that way. And then I do keep an eye on their website time to time, trying to understand what is it that this organization is trying to do. Every organization has their unique motto, so you should be able to understand it before you step into the interview room and tell them, oh, I have been dreaming for 5 years that I want to work for you guys. Well, you happen to offer the best salary package or all of that. You really need to understand what this organization is working for. So keep an eye on the website, keep yourself up to date. Let's talk a bit about the skill set that you need. I tell you, if you are getting yourself adjusted to this new normal life, please keep an eye on some of the websites and blogs. I can personally recommend a few. So every day morning, my ritual is I go through the Ideas blog, try and read at least one latest blog. I read one article from the Harvard Business Review. I try and read one article per week from The Economist, and I read World Economic Forum blogs. These are good places to keep yourself on top of the game and to have a great understanding of in which direction this world is moving. So it's economy, it's development, it's private sector, but it's more than that. It's also the politics underlying. So learn and read widely as much as you can. It's just going to make you a much better version of yourselves. leadership is really a vague term for me. So we can talk about some of the specific things that you need to achieve and gain to become a leader. So I started speaking with one question: what is your cause? So maybe that can also become your vision. It's something that you want to do in the long term, something that you're so passionate about. So you must have your vision. And then, are you able to influence people? Because a leader must have followers. He or she should be able to influence people's thoughts and trigger the process of change. Are you able to, navigate through complex situations? Are you good in interpersonal communication, or let's just say communication as a broader term? So these are some of the skills that you may want to watch out for. I'll not make it too long. Just coming to the last point, how did I personally and professionally benefit out of my UK education? So I know a lot of people and speakers from today's panel. I know them personally. I've met them at several occasions. Many of you know that I did my master's in development studies from the London School of Economics and Political Science. And I was there with the Chevening Scholarship. So the Ishret that went for the UK education, the one that came back, was a much better version of the previous one. Why? Because it lets you to get exposed to multiple cultures, and it's important. It's not just words and phrases, I tell you. The more you interact with people from diverse culture, the more you understand about the globalization process of the world, what's happening. What is Ethiopia doing to, trigger their development process? What is the, let's say, average number of children that a Nigerian woman is, giving birth every year? You may want to know all of these data and information. And books are always not the only way to go about it. You talk to people, you learn a few things, you learn about new perspectives and ideas. Culture, also important if you want to pursue a career in international development. By now, we all understand that every culture has its unique ways of communicating. So if you are communicating with a group of people in Australia or, let's say, Saudi Arabia, you may want to know what is it that they prefer in a meeting. What is it that is do's and don'ts in their own culture? So it's important you get that understanding. I had the opportunity to learn from the world level faculties. That's a great, rare and unique opportunities. And the more I say, the lesser I'll be able to say how important was it for me. I never read Hajung Chang, Angus Deaton, or let's just say being able to listen to Amartya Sen, being in a lecture theater was amazing experiences while I studied at LSE. But my point is, it's not the end. I have a degree from LSE. So what? So what? You have a degree from LSE. What do you do with that? How you utilize your academic experience and build on that, bringing it back to the practicing level where you work, where everything is really happening. That's where it matters. That's what is important. So use your academic and theoretical understanding and knowledge as a vantage point, not as the end of your life. And it's not the end of my life where I stand today. I want to go ahead, move on to many different levels and many more destinations. So just grow. Don't stop growing, don't stop reading, and don't stop learning. And please don't be afraid of failing. Failing is a great way to learn about many things. In your personal life and your professional life, the more you will accept your failures, the more you will be able to utilize lessons from those. So that's where I'm going to stop. Thank you, everyone. It was also a great learning experience for me as an individual from hearing from the previous speakers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ishret. Very interesting perspectives you've given us from your studies and your experiences. I particularly liked your your plea, your call out, find your passion, find your cause. And that I think is, it goes back to what we were saying before about you need to have empathy and you need to have passion for this. It's something that it's not just a job, and you made that point very clearly as well. Thank you all very much to Niaz, to Saudia, to Marziana and Ishret as well for your interesting perspectives. Lots of similarities and lots of differences in terms of how you've approached things, the experiences that you've had. But I personally found it very interesting to hear from you all. I look forward to being back in Bangladesh in the near future and being able to meet some of you again. And hopefully we will be able to pick up these kinds of events again in the future in a more face-to-face manner once we move past this COVID-19 situation. To the participants who've attended, thank you very much for your time and for attending. Some of you have posted questions. We are out of time now, I'm afraid. So what we will do is collate the questions. We will post those questions to our panelists, wait for a couple of comments from them, and then we will email these out to all of you so that you all have some comments to consider in the future. But clearly, we hope that you will have found this very useful. The development sector can be a wonderful, wonderful area to be working in. It's not the easiest area to work in, but it can be so, so, so rewarding. And I think that is what we've heard from all of our panelists today. Thank you all again for participating. Look forward to seeing you and speaking to you again soon. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Menard and British Council for this event. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you.